Before long, the files numbered in the millions. Jews found their way into the suspect population files from the very beginning because of attempts to organize sweatshop and garment workers, painters and carpenters, and other semi-skilled and skilled workers in New York. These files, in their entirety, comprised a vast suspect population, an enormous compendium of what became the usual suspects. There are cogent reasons for believing that Hoover thought that the suspect populations were far more dangerous to American life than Nazi Germany was even during World War II. At the start of World War II, 12 million tons of American wartime shipping was sunk, some of it within sight of our shores. The spies who provided the information needed by the German submarines were never discovered. In addition, there were 20,000 acts of sabotage. Harbors, arsenals, seaports burned to the ground. Here is the FBI report on the sabotage. Quote, between January 1940 and May 1945, the Bureau investigated 19,299 alleged cases of sabotage. Sabotage in some form was found in 2,282 incidents, primarily acts of spite, carelessness, malicious mischief, and the like. During World War II, not a single act of enemy direct sabotage was discovered in the United States. End of quote. Do you believe that? An interesting apology for finding no spies or sabotage was given by William Sullivan, a Hoover aide for 30 years. In a memoir of his life as an FBI official, Sullivan wrote, quote, when it came to the realities of espionage, J. Edgar Hoover was a head-in-the-clouds amateur, unquote. A deeper exploration of Hoover's incompetence in finding spies, however, reveals his amateurness to be highly selective. He chooses not to look among the powerful and the overly privileged, and definitely not among Anglo-Saxons. He had an intractable belief that the true enemies of the United States were not those with toxic dreams of being a super race, or who sabotaged our arsenals and harbors, sank our ships, and created 1 million American casualties in World War II. America's true enemies, he believed, were in the suspect populations in which liberals, dissenters, communists, socialists, utter deviants, and Jews especially were found. 38 years after reading and distributing the Protocols of Zion, Hoover, unable to control his unrelenting suspicion of Jews, publicly called on the Jews to abandon what he perceived to be their attraction to communism. In Masters of Deceit, a book by him, subtitled The Story of Communism in America and How to Fight It, he included a special chapter on American Jews. That chapter contained a warning from Hoover. Quote, where communist infiltration tactics have succeeded in Jewish organizations, it has been because of a failure on the part of leaders and members alike to be vigilant and thwart the communist tactic of infiltration into the Jewish community, unquote. What Hoover did not do is cite events that led him to his perception of the Jews' weakness for communism. At the very time Hoover was condemning Jews for their failure to combat communism, Dr. J.B. Matthews, the House Un-American Activities expert on religion, was arguing, quote, the largest single group supporting the communist apparatus in the United States today is composed of Protestant clergymen. There was no other ethnic group to which Hoover addressed the same warning that he addressed to the Jews. Under Hoover's instructions, the FBI became a conduit for providing lists of the names of enemies of the United States, in quotes, to various government agencies, and lists in which Jewish names predominated that he disseminated among other groups. An example, in September 1950, in a letter to the Immigration and Naturalization Service, a justice official forwarded the names of 34 suspects provided by the FBI who were connected with the Soviet espionage group who might seek passports. Of the 34 names, 53%, were identifiably Jewish. The letter did not request that the suspects be detained. A quarter of a century after Hoover's death, the FBI was still distributing lists in which Jewish names predominated. When the famous Venona decoders tried to fit real names to the cover names that were found in the decoded messages, 50% of the first batch of real names provided by the FBI were Jewish. As a result, genuinely real names were never found for more than 90% of the cover names. Previous speakers alluded to the tainted evidence at the Rosenberg-Sabel trial. Actually, what they have told you is, in some respects, verified by a former president. President Richard Nixon agreed in the 1990s, in respect to Ethel Rosenberg, that the guilty verdict given against her was in part due to suspect evidence, tainted evidence. And the source of that tainted evidence, he said, among the sources, was Hoover. I return to the question asked at the beginning: why were there no non-Jews among the defendants? One thing is certain: the answer given by law enforcement officials in December 1951 was false. I would like to conclude with a little rhyme that you may already know that illuminates the selectivity with which treason cases are prosecuted. I quote, "Treason doth never prosper. What's the reason? If it prosper, none dare call it treason."